But we're coming in here on a verse that a lot of Christians have trouble with. They're confused by this, and so I'm going to try and give some clarification. So Genesis chapter 6 verse 1 says, "Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born to them." When man began to multiply on the face of the earth, that was the instruction of Adam and Eve, to multiply on the face of the earth, populate the earth. And daughters were born to them. In other words, they were daughters, of course, that's obvious. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. Sons of God, which is angels, saw the daughters of men. In other words, these angels saw these women of mankind, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. Now, this is just one view. This is the view that I think, after I studied quite a bit about this, and whom they chose. And as a result of that, there was a mixed race here. Now, the other view is, some people think that sons of God is referring to the line of Seth. Again, refer to the previous video in Genesis chapter 5, where it speaks of the line of Seth. But that doesn't hold true in the fact that if it's the line of Seth was better, he still came from the line of Adam. And Seth was a person who might have been a good man, but he wasn't perfect. He sinned. And there was a lot of his generation, a lot of his descendants, that did not make it through the flood. So they received judgment just like anybody else. It makes much more sense to be consistent with Scripture that sons of God is referring to angels, as it was consistent throughout the Old Testament. It may be hard for us to imagine that angels would actually come down and have a relationship with women on the earth and produce offspring, as we'll see, produce offspring that aren't totally human. Verse 3, it says, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. That he's still flesh, yet his days will number 120 years, is referring to that time where he will begin counting these 120 years, given a responsibility to Noah to do something. There's going to be some catastrophic event that the Lord will say, I'm done with this sinful world. I'm done with the evil that has spread and multiplied, just like the people have multiplied. Since every single person's a sinner, sin will multiply throughout the entire world. And there's no one that's sinless. Everyone has failed and become evil in the eyes of God. And that doesn't mean he doesn't love them. Matter of fact, 120 years is more than our lifetime. That he has been merciful. He could have, in one swoop of the hand, destroyed the entire earth and start over again. But he didn't do that. There's a purpose for all this. Let's look at verse 4. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, and men of renown. But these giants is the word Nephilim. And maybe I can show you that here if it shows up. Nephilim, here you go. Let's show you. So that's the definition. We're using a Strong's Concordance to define the Hebrew. As you can see there, number 2, it says Nephilim, fallen or mighty ones. It doesn't refer to giants necessarily, but it's referring to that there were angels who came and had relationships with the daughters of mankind, and they bore children to them. So that is a species of mixed race, one that is an angel, which is much more powerful than man. And it was often understood in the text before around 200, 300 AD that the Hebrew text all referred to these sons of God as angels. It was changed later on and adopted by Augustine and adapted by the Roman Catholic Church as being the line of Seth, which is an incorrect understanding because there's no possible way, as you'll see why in verses ahead. But if you keep an open mind and listen of what I'm saying here, because I have done a lot of study on this, and I know there's a lot of people who will say, well, that doesn't make sense, I'm not going to listen to this. But those angels, those fallen angels, had relationships with daughters of men, and they bore children to them, and they were mighty men who were of old, men of renown. There's an emphasis on that those who were offsprings of this relationship were mighty and powerful. And I've gone both ways on this, and I studied this when I first studied the Bible without commentaries. I believe is the biblical version. When I started reading commentaries, I said, well, that can't be the sons of God. Those can't be angels. But why not? What we understand of that other dimension that we can't see or fully understand, well, that is something that is beyond the norm. And that's okay, because so is God himself. So are angels. We don't see angels. We can't always depend on what we see. What we can do is depend on what the Word of God says. And in the original Hebrew, they understood that these sons of God would have been angels who came to the daughters of men, bore children to them, and now they were mighty men, were a mixed race of both angel and mankind, and they were powerful and strong. And so this could be something that we need to see if that's something that makes sense. Verse 5. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent and the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. A judge would not be a good judge if he allowed evil to run rampant. The society would expect you to be judged righteously, judged according to the law, judged according to what is morally correct. And that's determined by the judge. The Lord who created us recognized that we were failed from the fall in the garden, starting with Adam, and throughout time we just got continually worse and worse. And that action by the evil angels and the daughters of men on the earth created mighty, powerful, mixed race of a generation to create even more evil, but mighty, powerful beings on the earth. So in verse 6, the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. Grieves God in his heart. Watching the wickedness of the world, people say, well, God doesn't exist because there would be no wickedness in this world, and all these suffering wouldn't be there, and the wars wouldn't be happening, so therefore God doesn't exist. No, that's not true. That's not the way it works. Because if he forced everybody to love him, it wouldn't be love. If he forced people to just get along, well, there would be no relationship. If he forced people into heaven and with him, and they curse his name, they use Jesus Christ as a curse word, or God as a curse word, and I'm sure many people out there know that when you say OMG, you are cursing God. That grieves God. That makes him very sad in his heart. When it says in the Bible, in his heart, we're talking about deep pain. You'd have to do something drastic in verse 7. So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. As a result, as being the creator, he has every right to start over or to judge them. both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. Now, when he say, I am sorry that I have made them, he's not saying that it was a mistake. God was sorry because he saw what he knew would happen. He actually visibly seen it on earth. He saw both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air. All of creation was cursed. Right in the beginning, where Adam and Eve, part of the judgment we have in Genesis chapter 3. We can look at that video earlier. All that he created was cursed. It was that not only man was going to face death, because every man dies, mankind dies. But every bird dies too. Every creeping thing dies. Every beast dies too. Judgment as a result of disobeying God came to everything that was created. That was created is the key. So God is not affected about this. God is the one who sees his creation, and he sees that judgment must come. But is a great word in the Bible. When you see all these terrible things it talks about, and you go, oh, this is so terrible, this is what situation. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah means comfort or rest. That's what his name means. I mean, I found out that last year the number one name in Ontario was Noah. Interesting. This time, I don't even know if people realize what that name means. But it means comfort and rest. And it's used in this fashion to show that we have a gracious God, and he was looking for someone such as Noah, who is named for the purpose that the hope of his father was someone who would bring comfort and grace to the world. Interesting how the names kind of fit together really beautifully. And Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So it wasn't popular amongst the evil people. It wasn't a popular guy. He didn't go to the parties. He didn't do this. And it wasn't perfect either. If people think that he was perfect, he was not. What he was someone that had a desire to please God and do and believe what he said, what God said was true. And his life demonstrated that he was a believer in the Lord. A changed life. Noah probably heard the story right from Adam. Adam, when he was still alive, almost to the point of the flood. And that, because of the age they lived, the 900 some years, it was passed on from generation to generation, preserved through the line of Seth. And that's what the importance of the line of Seth is. Not to say the line of Seth would be the line that is referring to Nephilim, giants. I'm not talking about spiritual giants there. But that line of Seth would be the line in which was passed on what Adam had experienced in the garden. So that line would have been preserved. And also it was important to know that it's listed in the genealogy of Jesus Christ.